Hi, welcome. This is the CaddyInfo.com Thursday night chat. It's the end of the year and people are getting wrapped up in things, so we'll probably just have a short non-chat tonight. The Cadillac hasn't been a ton of Cadillac news. This week in the news, Cadillac said, "Gosh, the ELR hasn't sold well," so that's not really news. They feel like that they did the ELR as a focused extended range battery electric vehicle, and that maybe that was a mistake, and they should have focused on, for example, the new CT6 will offer a hybrid drivetrain. So in other words, it'll be a large luxury Cadillac, which also offers a battery extended range variant. So you're getting full-size luxury Cadillac, but you may choose as a powertrain to have a hybrid extended range battery powertrain. So they're hoping that would be better luck for them. Another kind of piece of non-news was the ATS still isn't selling that well. Now I had been kind of harping on that, but the ATS is selling well globally, because it sells quite well in the Chinese market. It's not selling well in the United States. It's about sixth in its class. The class leader is still the 3 Series, and the 3 Series is selling almost right at 11,000 a month. The ATS around 2,000 a month. So Cadillac was hoping the ATS would sell at the same rate as the 3 Series. So if they were splitting up that 12, they'd each be selling 6. But they're not. And there's no clear consensus on exactly why that is, other than, the 3 Series has 30 years of legacy or whatever it's been since they've been making 3 Series. And people will buy, people say, well, the ATS, the rear seat's cramped. Well, the 3 Series, the rear seat's cramped. There's no rear leg room in a 3 Series. It's a little track car. But here we are. So the ATS is almost an exact copy of the prior 3 Series, only slightly better, and but it's not selling well. And the 3 Series is the class leader. So clearly, if you want to come from behind against the class leader, you've got to bring more than what the class leader is bringing. And here's Air Mike, just on time.
Hey, Bruce.
How are you doing? We are live. Us and the truck show.
Anybody else here yet?
No one else is here yet. But so I was giving kind of the highlights of things that we won't be talking about. The ATS continues not to sell well. GM Authority, I appreciate what they're trying to do over there, because they come up with a lot of great article ideas. Alex Luft over at gmauthority.com. They come up with a lot of great article ideas, but they noted that I'm hearing me through your speakers, I guess. Am I playing on your headset, or do you have the video running in the window, maybe?
No, same as normal.
Maybe I'm just hearing some other audio in the background. So Alex does a great job over at GM Authority of drumming up articles. And so one of them was, the ATS still isn't selling well. Now the new models are going to show, the ATS Premium has the programmable dash, where you can choose their video sections. It's not the fully programmable dash that they use on the CTS Premium, which is literally just a video display. And you can with a lot of, I don't think anyone actually is, but they actually have the user interface where you can design your own dash. But they'll give you a great deal of options with setting up the dash on the CTS Premium. On the ATS Premium, you get 3 little sections that you can choose what gauge to show in that section. So my wife's car is like this, that you can choose, well, over on the, like, she will keep the compass up on the left, and she'll keep miles left in the range on the right. And then like this speed in miles per hour in the center. But one of the things they're adding in 2016 for the turbo cars is a boost sensor. A boost gauge is available to as a selection in that semi-customizable dash. So that'll be nice. And that was amazing that GM Authority detected that, which I appreciate that level of attention to detail. That this wasn't a new feature. It's just when you're rolling through that display, and in my wife's 2013, it doesn't offer you, PSI of boost, and they realized that in the 2016 it does offer you PSI of boost. So Cadillac just quietly added that in. You're a little bit offset in the picture tonight, Mike.
I've seen that.
Oh, okay. Well, it's just when it does your small picture that it has trouble with it because you were sitting off to the side. When I get the big picture, you fit right in. So Cadillac's not going to show anything at the upcoming Detroit show. Cadillac consider now that they've moved to New York, they're kind of thinking of themselves as a New York car company. And so they may be waiting for the New York International Auto Show to make their next big disclosure. We think maybe next will be the Escalade V Sport, or the Escalade V is what we'll hear about. Although, we've got the XT5 coming out in 2017, so they've already shown the XT5. I don't remember if there's another step. I don't know why we're waiting to 2017, but I don't know if there's another step where we have to show an actual production version of the XT5. But we'd like to hear we'd like to see the CT7 or CT8, the one that's coming after the CT6, that they should be shipping CT6s in March. We're expecting them to show up in the showrooms, at least in China. I think that they will arrive first in China and then in the United States, for whatever reason for the sequence they're going. So how did your road trip go?
It was pretty good, actually. Yeah, I had a lot of driving, but it was a long drive, but it was a good visit. No problems. Weather was pretty good for driving.
Good. And Mike had his Cadillac Bear along with him in the car to help navigate.
Yeah, it's still out in the car. My wife hasn't seen it yet. I told her tonight I got it, but she hasn't seen it.
If you want to be subtle, what you would do is just hang it on the tree.
Yeah. Maybe I'll go get it.
Make an ornament of it.
Right. I did reset my gas mileage display before I left, and it got 26.9 round trip.
Wow, that's amazing.
A lot of 85-mile-an-hour driving in there.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think my SDSV has ever gotten above 25 and 25, 26 in that range, and that's on a good day. But it's cold weather, which helped. Or it was pretty cold the day you came through here, and I think that helps it run a bit better.
Right. Anyway, yeah, I was pretty happy with all that too.
And your car is a little bit lighter than my car, and so that's got to help. I guess the aerodynamics are better on it.
I wouldn't know. If you look at the stats on the computer anywhere, and it doesn't say it'll get that much gas mileage.
No, that's not what's advertised. But but we think your intake helps with that, right?
I would think it probably helps some.
Yeah, that was kind of my read. Is after I did the intake and the exhaust, the miles per gallon got a little better. But it's seasonal, and it's hard to do back-to-back MPG tests because they changed the gas formulas during the summer in order there's many moving pieces. But I think that kind of testimony where you take a long trip and reset the computer and let it tell you, the computer on the GM cars, what the computer metric actually measures is how long each fuel injector event was open, and so how much gas was used.
I did notice one thing when I got to Tulsa and I filled up with gas. I lost about a half a mile a gallon the rest of the trip. The average just kept going down and down all the way till I got home.
Could be that it was uphill from Tulsa. It could be that the gas was 2 counts worse octane. It could be you just can't tell, right?
Right. I mean,
too many variables.
I try to go to major brand gas. I don't want to get I don't like Quick Trip or whatever. I try to get
But
the
at that
major.
point, but at that point, you turned east, right, or west, and so you,
Well, from Tulsa, I was basically going north.
yeah. So you, but the wind may have been with you before and not after, or there's
Oh yeah.
many variables in this. Oh, now I
The,
couldn't understand why the dog was bothering the ink pen, but now I see the dog was destroying the ink pen. So that explains it. It must have
actually,
smelled.
for my gas mileage business, my speed dropped from roughly 80, 85 constantly to 70. I don't know if that had something to do with it or not.
You think it gets worse gas mileage at the lower speed?
I wouldn't think so, but it sure did. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
what was the cause?
counterintuitive.
I don't know.
No, I do appreciate and agree because my SCSV and the reason I keep contrasting these or comparing these is because Mike's car is an XLR with an LC3 powertrain, and my car is an SDSV with an LC3 powertrain. So they have more or less exactly the same engine, not exactly, but they have the same engine and the same transmission. And my car does have a sweet spot around 80 or 85, which is where it would cruise if there were no speed limits, right?
Right.
It just gets into kind of a lope where it's the perfect mix of how much torque the engine's making and how much power is required. That it's
Right.
like an effortless cruise at 80 or 85 in that range. And so it wouldn't shock me if that actually was more efficient because the car is more or less running uh, there's no load on the engine basically.
Right.
So
And I don't know if we have the same gear ratio or not. We probably do.
now I guess I don't know too. I was assuming that we do, but maybe I don't know. I'll have to go study that.
Yes. Homework for the week.
Homework for the week. I could tell you on the regular XLR because I had to go study that in order to get some of the tuning done. Uh, because I wanted to do comparisons, and that was one of the ways with a virtual dyno program uh, by Barnhill. Then you put in the exact gear ratios in order to measure the performance of the car. Now, Ward's Automotive also noted that the new LGX 3.6 liter V6 that Cadillac's using they named it one of their 10 best engines for this year.
Is that
So
what's in your?
no, this is the brand new engine that they're having for the 16s. This one adds a start stop.
Oh yes.
And so in my wife's car has the 2-liter turbo, but of course they've offered the 3.6 liter since 2004, but that was 255 horsepower, not direct injected variable valve timing engine. And so what they've done is they've continued to develop. So from that 255 horsepower level in 2004, now they're making 335 horsepower from the 2016 engine. So over that 12 years, they've evolved to much more power and better miles per gallon.
Win-win.
Yeah, win-win, exactly. Now it's direct injected. It has variable valve timing on the intake and the exhaust on all examples, and it has the start-stop technology. Now, I was driving a rent-a-car this week with the start-stop, and I kind of got the hang of it now, and so I understand exactly how we can make it Texas Gym friendly. And the key is so these cars use a high voltage starter, right? So it has a high voltage circuit, so it can real quick spin the engine up to speed when it does need to start. But what happens is it's not you take your foot off the brake and you push the gas and then the engine starts. It's as soon as you take your foot off the brake, the engine starts.
So there's no hesitation.
So the sequence will be if you want to go lickety split, before you get ready to go lickety split, you take your foot off the brake and the engine starts, and then zoom off you go, right?
So you're gonna
So
have to
so
beat it up.
as long as you realize that that's what's happening. The other thing is a lot of car guys, are sensitive enough that if I stop at the light and the engine stops, I'm used to that being a bad thing, right?
Right.
That I would constantly hear the engine not running,
Right, and it would bother you.
and it would bother me. So now I'm going to have to get used to not being concerned with that, and not being worried about the fact that the electrical things are still running even though the engine's not running, and just take my foot off the brake and be happy.
It's going to cause you to keep it tuned and a good battery in it and a lot of stuff like that, isn't it?
Well, and I suspect I still agree with Jim that ideal would be if there's an on-off switch where if you just don't want start-stop technology on this trip for whatever reason, then you can turn that off. Like if I was in a situation where I just gotten a jump start because the battery was run down and I'm just trying to get the car over to the place to buy a battery, I don't want it stopping. I don't want it stopping at the next light, right?
You don't want to jump start at every stoplight.
No. So I would like an on-off switch, and maybe it does that. I have to go look at the programming because maybe it senses if the battery is below 12 volts, it doesn't turn the car off. Or
Right,
something, that would be so. If you're watching GM Engine, Mr. Goodwrench, if you're tuned in, that would be number one: is start, stop, no. If the battery voltage is less than 12 volts, then we need to keep going because we got to charge the battery up. So
we surely have to give them credit for figuring that out ahead of time, right?
yeah, but just in case, I would like to mention it. And so, and if you could call that the Air, Mike, and Bruce feature when you do put that in, the limp to the battery store feature, I would appreciate it. So I do agree. It's fun that they've added the boost gauge to the. One of the things I would like to see though is stop doing the cheap dashes. They got the cool programmable display dash like in the CTS Premium. Put that bad boy in everything. I don't know what the difference in cost between just having the cool panel, but every Cadillac should have the cool electronic dash. And I would think if you buy it for every Cadillac, then that would drive the cost down and you'd be happy. And so you'd have a better product at a lower cost and you'd be happy.
And I would think people are buying a Cadillac, they want the
premium.
Yeah.
See, I wonder if Cadillac needs to just cut that out. Instead of having a standard Cadillac that's defeatured, decontented, and a luxury or performance value Cadillac that has some features, or a premium Cadillac that actually has everything you would expect. Now, when I go shop now, I only shop for the premium one because I want everything you would expect, right? I want the lane change.
Cadillac gizmos.
I want all the gizmos. That's Cadillac. And so I'm thinking eliminate the ATS standard and the ATS luxury and the ATS performance and have the ATS premium and the CTS premium and the CT6 premium and the Escalade premium and just be happy. And use,
somebody's got a reason for that. They got people that figure all that out. Maybe they're just outsmarting.
Well, yeah, they do. And I do occasionally see, now the reason they do that is there's some people that just, the car they can afford is the entry-level ATS, the $35,000 2.5 liter inline four ATS.
And they're not going to go buy a Chevrolet instead.
No, they want the Cadillac, but that's the one they can afford to lease, and so they go get that one. And so it doesn't matter if you have every feature available at $55,000, at $50,000, because they're not spending $50,000; they're spending $35,000. So there's two problems here. One is you shouldn't sell a Cadillac that's not the great car, right? That's decontented. The second problem is your premium ATS should not cost $55,000.
Right.
That you don't add $15,000 worth of options to this car, and stop doing the 2-liter turbo engine. Probably costs them more than the 3.6-liter engine does, because the turbos and the extra intercooler, the extra heat exchanger and the intercooler, but they sell it for less because their perception is the customer's perception is, well, the 3.6-liter has more power, so it's worth more, right?
Right.
So they sell, no, cut that out. What they should do is,
they're trying to trick people.
Yep. And so what they need to, and maybe that's their idea, is we'll offer this 2-liter 4-cylinder, but we'll make the 3.6-liter just a little bit more expensive. So people come in and say, well, for $2,000, I'd rather have the more powerful engine.
Yeah.
But of course, the sad part is the 2-liter turbo actually makes more torque up until about 4,500 RPM. And these people that are buying them aren't driving the car above 4,500 RPM anyway, right?
Right.
They're never putting their, so they'd be happier. They'd be happier with the 2-liter turbo.
Right.
Like my wife's car. And I have offered to tune my wife's car. And my current understanding is no, hell no. But I have offered.
Oh, that sounds like my wife's Mustang.
Yes.
If I told her for positive it would go faster than my XLR, she might let me. But if that happened, then I'd have to figure out how to make my XLR faster. So can't have the dang Mustang outrunning it.
Well, that's okay. Okay. Take that challenge. She's got to go get the new Shelby 500, right?
Oh, yeah. I told her that at work, but then I told her how much it cost. She didn't want one that bad.
Yeah. Then the problem was solved. And that's the problem I'm going to run into, I think, is trying to figure out how much I want to pay for my next Cadillac. But I'm still thinking that's next year. Next year I will switch around and get a different daily driver. And so we'll just have to see where the different markets are next year and what looks like the right one. So I think that was almost the Cadillac non-news this week. Their engine was selected in the top 10. The GM sales in general are still doing well. GM's agreed to write a big check over the ignition thing, but that didn't really affect Cadillac.
Hey, I have a question about this. Who picked the engine, the best engine?
Ward Automotive. Ward Automotive.
What is their criteria? I mean, it's just a new one, so they're not going by something that lasts a long time, or what is their?
They have kind of an engineering slant, and so what they do is they look at all the engines that come out each year, and then they try and figure out which one has the coolest technology, and then they do a write-up about it saying Ward's Auto is it's Ward's with an S, Ward's Auto. And then they do a write-up about the engines, talking about the technology in this one, the technology in that one, and so on.
So they're not saying it's a more powerful or any, I don't know what to call it, but they're just saying it's a up-to-date coolest engine. Basically.
Yeah, basically. That's what I would say. And if one of the guys from Ward's Auto wants to come on and explain it to us better, then they're welcome to.
And we'd be glad to hear it.
We would be glad to hear it. We would be happy to entertain. We would be happy to be corrected. So let me read the actual press release. Was named one of the Ward's 10 best engines. The V6 debuted this year and is optional. Will be offered. They reviewed 31 engines from 11 auto manufacturers in this year's competition, which looked at power, fuel efficiency, new technology, and refinement, and compared it with data for similar engines and propulsion systems. So it came in it was in the top 10 out of 31 is what we know.
So it had nothing to do with reliability.
No.
Okay. Well,
Now, one of the things that they gave a favorable comment, they said the 3.6 liter delivers the kind of power and lusty exhaust note you associate with a V8 for the price of a V6. Plus, it's loaded with advanced technology, including fuel-saving cylinder deactivation, said Drew Winter, Director of Content at Ward's Auto. Now, this is another thing that some of the other kids were complaining about, is they don't think the current Cadillac engines have a lusty enough exhaust note. They're wanting them to be to sound more sporty, not to be louder, but to sound more sporty. Now, that's one of the things I do enjoy about the XLR, and that I enjoyed also about my STS North Star, is that the North Star, when it comes on cam, so to speak, above 4,400 RPM, has a really nice sound to it.
right.
And of course the turbo engines are at a disadvantage that way. I don't know why the 3.6 liter wouldn't have a great sound to it, but the GM Authority guys were that's on their wish list, for they wish the Cadillac sounded better.
They're going to have to do that for the younger generation, for sure, right?
Well, but not the way BMW did it, hopefully, which is they actually synthesize the engine sounds and then play them over the radio speakers.
Does
So
that
that you can
interfere
hear
with
the engine? Yeah. No, apparently they mix it. But I of course don't mind a loud exhaust or engine sound. I have a custom Cadillac put very careful baffling in the intake and the LC3, so you couldn't hear the supercharger. So I got rid of all that crap, and they put very careful mufflers on the SDSV, so it would be a executive ride, not have a loud exhaust. So I replaced that with a coarse exhaust. And so mine's competing between, can it make the most noise from the engine or make the most noise from the exhaust, right? But so I'm not a big, I'm okay with hearing engine noises, but I do want them to be authentic engine noises. I want it to be the noises the engine is making.
Yeah.
Not filtered, not digitally enhanced, and not simulated. I want it to be the actual noises the engine's making. But the problem you run into is on these cars, they want the car to be so isolated and to reduce road noise. And so how can you have just the engine noise and not the noise of the car next to you playing their radio too loud?
Right.
So
you have to have that's one thing I never thought about, but we should have given you a ride in my car so you could tell me what you thought of the sound of it.
Exactly. To see if it was louder or quieter than mine. But
yours doesn't have the exhaust that opens up at 3,500, the baffles, right?
No, that's correct. That Mike's got the stock XLR-V exhaust, but the stock XLR-V exhaust had the mild to wild kind of set up like the Corvettes, where above 3,500 RPM, it opens up a baffle and it's louder. No, but my Corsa is louder when you accelerate. It's quiet at idle, and then it gets louder the faster you accelerate.
Your XLR has Corsa, or the other car?
No, the STSV. So I would think that our cars are at high RPM are equivalent, but yeah, that would be another. Next time you come through town, Mike was nice. Mike was nice enough to stop through on his road trip, and so we got to actually meet in person, which we had not done. And he brought his XLR through, and I had my XLR out for the day. In hindsight, we kind of wished I'd brought the SDSV so that we could compare and contrast the two V cars next to each other, but it was still made a nice visit.
Yeah, when I originally started that, I was going to spend days driving, and I probably would have spent a day down there and picked a day when you had time, and it sort of changed.
Yeah, unfortunately, I married a woman who believes that I should continue working into my retirement years.
I just don't get it. What in the heck?
Yeah, what in the heck's she thinking?
Work?
Yeah, apparently it's important that we continue to be able to eat, and so and you know I have all these toys that I enjoy, and that ties to keeping a salary coming too.
Somebody's gonna have to pay for them, aren't they?
Exactly. So I guess I'm actually on her side that way. So, but yeah, Mike came through on a day where I already had a full schedule, but we were able to figure out a little bit of time to spend together before he dashed off to get back on the highway. And I headed back, but hopefully we can get together another day. And as you say, maybe I can bring the SDSV through Kansas, and we can compare notes that way. I need to get both my cars out and do road test in the cold air. You know, I always did test on my SDSV when it was too hot to handle. You know, it was when it was in the summer,
Right.
and on the cooling system when it was in the summer. And so I don't have a lot of really good test numbers on it when the air was cold. And the same thing with my XLR, that I'd like to get comparative numbers for it when the air is cold, like now.
Right.
Before the roads get too cold and the tires get so hard that you don't have much traction. But the way I'm testing right now, it's not traction dependent anyway. That it's more, you know, running from a roll in order to measure RPM through, you know, from 4,000 to red line in second gear kind of spans. But yeah, is your car louder than you prefer?
No, I actually wouldn't mind if it was slightly louder, but I'm not at all unhappy with it.
But you have a
If
lot
it,
of supercharger noise with that intake, right?
yes, but I like that's a sound I like to hear.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
uh,
for if you're not aware, for those of you playing at home, the supercharger actually our superchargers turn at 2.2 times the engine RPM. So when the engine's going 6,500 RPM, the supercharger's turning 15,000 RPM. And so what it sounds like is you have a small air pump that's running 15,000 RPM. That's what it sounds like. Is it makes a really high pitched whine, like ee, and you can hear that in some of the SDSV videos if you'll go listen on the video. But superchargers make a specific whine, and as I say, Cadillac designed around that. They built baffles in that would capture that sound and not pass it through out of the engine compartment. But for performance purposes, what Mike's done with the D3 intake, or what I've done with the Spectre intake, is replaced all the Cadillac intake and took away that sound dampening and baffling. So now you can hear the supercharger very clearly when Cadillac intended for it to be very muted. So, but I prefer the supercharger sound, especially if you're accelerating next to someone so that they understand that the car is supercharged.
I actually haven't run into anybody that didn't like to hear that sound.
But the Cadillac designers thought that you and I as owners would not want to hear that.
Evidently.
And the SDSVs are a good, and the CTSVs, the current CTSVs are a good example of the level of overkill that I believe Cadillac should be striving for. In other words, if you think you need 450 horsepower to be competitive, you should design the car with 550 horsepower. If you think it needs 500 horsepower to be competitive, you should design it with 700 horsepower.
Yes, you would
That's
never come up just on the verge of where you need it. Come up
no,
short.
that's luxury. Luxury is where you have excess. You know, the Rolls Royce always said they never gave the rating for their engines. They always just said the power from this engine is adequate.
Hey, I never heard that.
You don't need more power. You know, so I actually love getting the actual figures. I wish Cadillac would begin rating their engines as rear wheel horsepower, which I believe BMW does, instead of The SAE standard is horsepower at the crank, which Cadillac is correct to follow the standards and rate it that way. But I wish that they would give comparative horsepower to what we think BMW is doing.
Do both horsepower ratings.
That's what I would do. Just like in 72 when they gave gross and net, I would start giving, here's the SAE standard at the engine is, 464 horsepower, and at the rear wheels with the automatic transmission, that this car actually makes 350 horsepower. That's what I would do.
They're never going to want to do that if they're lagging behind, though.
Yes, and therein lies the problem. See, I called this from a mile away because when they came with the 2-liter turbo, I said, you know what, guys? Yes, BMW has a 2-liter turbo. Yes, the BMW 2-liter turbo is rated at less horsepower than you guys, 240 horsepower. But no, you can't bring out an engine at 260 horsepower and get better performance than their 240 horsepower engine because they're tricking you. And so, BMW has a 425 horsepower M3 engine in the M3. So how much power did the Cadillac need to bring in the ATS-V? The BMW engine's 425. So Cadillac said, well, BMW's 425. We can tune the new LC4 engine and make it LF4 engine. We can make the new LF4 engine 464 horsepower. 464 is more than 425, right?
So they're just trying to sell it on paper.
But no, when BMW says the air engine's making 425, it's at the wheel. So you have to divide that by 0.8, right? If it's an automatic transmission car, or 0.85 if it's a manual transmission car. So when you take their 425 and you divide it by 0.8, it's actually making 531 horsepower at the crank. And so when you bring your 464 horsepower ATS-V and line it up next to the M3 that's making 500 to 531 horsepower at the crank, then they have more. Even though on paper you have more, on the street they have more because they lied.
And your feelings are just hurt.
They marketed. That's what they did. They marketed. And so when the ATS first came out, and they had a 4-liter turbo versus a 4-liter turbo, and the 3.6-liter versus the 3-liter, and the 3.6-liter twin turbo versus the 3-liter turbo. When the ATS first came out, the 2-liter turbo was slower than the BMW 2-liter turbo, which was wrong because the Cadillac 2-liter turbo had more power. But it was exactly this problem, right? And so the ATS lost all the magazine tests when it first came out. It was second and third, fourth place because they weren't offering the same performance that the class leaders were.
They were comparing apples and oranges.
Exactly. Anyway, let's think positive Cadillac. My friend, Mr. Beard, always is coaching me. Hey, Bruce, you keep talking about the same thing, how aggravated you are with Cadillac over X, Y, or Z. So what's the best thing that Cadillac has done in your mind lately?
They've made a great CTS-V.
Yeah, I think the new CTS-V is very nice. I love the 640 horsepower in the LT4, and I think that we'll see a ton more development for the LT4 as we go. And I love using the same engine as the Corvette, so that you have, and the new Camaros. Eventually, the Camaro will get the LT4, and we'll see a ton of aftermarket available for it, which I love. And so, if I was picking, I would pick the LSA or the LT4 over some of the other powertrains, just because then you get just based on the powertrain, because then you get that aftermarket. I am not in the market for the CT6, which is going to be, a big full-size Cadillac with great new powertrains. This new 3-liter twin turbo sounds great. And then there's a 4.5-liter V8 twin turbo coming probably next year. And so I'm not in the market for the CT6 because I want a smaller car, but I'm very excited about this car. And I'm very interested to see it actually and to test one. And so I'm with the 35 speaker sound system and, huge interior, all bespoke, all everything in this car is going to be premium. The video, rear view mirror, there are many features I'm looking forward to seeing in this car, and seeing Cadillac bring to the whatever replaces the ATS.
Yes, it'd be nice to see it. Whether you guys after it or not, it'd be really nice to see them out
Exactly. And I hope they sell like hotcakes.
there. You might be after one day.
I might. As I say, I like a smaller wheelbase car, but I have the XLR for that, and so it could be that I could get the CT6 just because it's a beautiful full size Cadillac and gets good gas mileage besides. What else could you want in a Cadillac?
Right, a lot of people are not after sports cars, so.
Yeah, but the twin turbo 3-liter with the 400 horsepower and a 3,600-pound car, that'll actually be a nice combination.
Yes.
I mean, it's not as much power as your car, but that'll be a nice combination.
Well, that's what technology has done for us, because that's basically what the original STS was, a nice sized car with good horsepower.
Yeah.
And now it's outdated now, but
now it'll have the more, and it'll be rear wheel drive or all wheel drive, and it'll be about the same weight as the mid 90s SCSs were, even though it's got the now that's only true for the 2-liter turbo, I guess. By the time you get this new 3-liter twin turbo, I think they weigh a little bit more. I'm not sure what's driving the more weight, but when you get and it could be the different suspension. I'll have to go study that, because the CT6 is coming in at like 3,700 pounds for the 2-liter turbo version. But then by the time you get, the full-blown platinum, it's at 3,900 pounds. So there's something in that process that's adding 300 pounds. And so I wanted to say, well, it's the 3-liter turbo, but the 2-liter turbo has all the weight of the turbos and the heat exchanger and so on. So it would have equivalent weight problems, right? So I'm not sure what's adding the weight. It could be something simple like there's a 100-pound sunroof in the platinum version.
right.
Sunroofs are terrible for performance. They add weight up high. They add weight and they add weight up high, which is the last place you want it. But
right.
But they're fun.
What's the weight of these Cadillacs versus the German cars or whoever's car they're comparing to?
The CT6 is going to weigh less than everybody else. It weighs less than everybody in its class, and in some cases by 500 or 600 pounds.
I was thinking that's what the ATS's big advantage was. So the CTS is lighter also.
Well, let me restate that. The new CT6 is using it's using a high concentration of aluminum and modern bonding techniques and so on. So the new CT6, even though it's a full-size car, the base CT6 is going to weigh almost as little as an ATS does. The ATS, every gram had to earn its way. The ATS weighs around 3,400 to 3,600 pounds, depending on which configuration you get. And the new CT6 is going to weigh 3,600 to 4,300 pounds. So by the time you get the premium all-wheel drive, it's 4,300 pounds, as much as your car, as much as my car.
Right.
But if you stay with the 2-liter, standard, the base model CT6 at 53,000, then it's 3,600 pounds. But I'm not sure what adds another 600 pounds to it. Because I would think the base model has magnetic struts and has turbos and has intercoolers. So I'm not sure. The all-wheel drive, if you add that, should add 200 or 300 pounds. So that's half of the 600. And then it may be, the sunroof's 100 and it's just taking off the features, right?
Right.
Well, the bigger engine has to have a better transmission. Better's the wrong word. The bigger engine has to have a more durable transmission. So the
Right.
powertrain probably weighs more because of that. You have to have more drive shaft. You have to have more engine. You have to have more transmission.
Right. Everything's got to be bigger.
So it's probably that the all-wheel drive adds. If you stay away from the all-wheel drive and stay rear-wheel drive, then that'll keep you under 3,900 pounds. But you got to have everything bigger because of the more power. So in that range, would you rather have a 400 horsepower 3,900 pound car or a 300 horsepower 3,600 pound car? I'm going to say the more horsepower, right?
Most generally, I always want more horsepower, but if I'm just after a good riding, and I'm after just a riding car, not a sports car. And matter of fact, I'm probably after a car that rides better next time because I have these other cars,
Right.
I'm not planning on getting rid of them. So I'll still have both. But if I'm going to have both, then at that point, I'd probably want I wouldn't be after that more horsepower. I'd be after the heavier car, more better ride.
Yeah, I think
I got that good English going.
I think the big question would be how decontented is the 2-liter version, right? What else? What are you missing on the CT6 standard versus the CT6 premium versus the CT6 platinum? If the 2-liter standard version has almost everything you'd want, but I bet you have to get the premium to get all the cool features. If you want the 35 speaker sound system and the video rear view mirror and you got to get the premium, the 3,900 pound car.
Probably.
That's marketing. That's how they get you to open your checkbook.
Just got to buy a little more.
Yeah. Yeah. $30,000 more options and you can get the cool stuff.
Yep.
But I would like to see Cadillac narrow that, where I think the maximum you should have in options is something on the order of $15,000. And so if the base price is 53, it should only stretch up to like 68, and that's all. The current Cadillacs.
It should be a percentage of the car then, in other words. If you had $1 million car and you could have higher priced options.
I agree. But my sense of it is it should be no more than 20 or 30% of the car.
Right. Because then you're getting the price of a whole different brand of car or different car.
You should have different levels of car, right? And that was one of the problems I ran into when we were shopping for an ATS, because I called my friend Darren over at Crest Cadillac and I said, okay, we're shopping for a 2013 ATS. I want the premium and I want the driver awareness package, which was like a premium on top of the premium, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that package added the radar cruise control. So I wanted the premium plus the radar cruise control. And he said, Bruce, you don't want that. And I said, well, yeah, that's what I want. And he said, no, the problem is by the time you get that, you could have gotten the CTS. And the CTS is a lot more car than the ATS is. And so if you want to get an ATS, don't get the driver awareness package, because that's adding another 3, wind back your options a little bit. If you want to spend that much money, go ahead and get a CTS because you get a nicer car. So, but I think that's Cadillac's got too much overlap, right? So if the ATS is going from 35 to 55, and the XCS goes from like 45 to 55, and then the CTS goes from like 45 to 65.
Have you shopped for other brands of cars? Are they doing the same thing?
Well, I don't think it's that strong. Like the BMW M's, the 3 Series starts in the low 30s, and it goes up to, they advertise it up to like 70. So they have a wide span. But if you want to get in a 5 Series, I think the 5 Series starts, above the 3 Series. So in other words, by the time you get an M3, you're just into the 5 Series cost. And then if you want to get a 7 Series, it's, you know, even above the 5 Series cost. So the 5 Series starts at 50. And I'm thinking that on paper, the 3 Series tops out at 50, but I may be wrong. So the 3 Series starts at 33. And then if you get an M3, of course, we probably could set aside the M cars and the V cars because that's just a whole different market, right?
Right.
So the 3 Series is, guess what? The 3 Series is 30,000, the 4 Series is 40,000, the 5 Series is 60,000, and the 6 Series is 77, and the 7 Series is 81. So I see a real trend here, and I would support this absolutely, is have the ATS, call the ATS the CT3 and sell it for 30,000. Call the CTS the CT5 and sell it for CT4 and sell it for 40,000. And call the new car the CT6 and sell it for 60,000. You're done.
You got it all figured out.
But a 3 Series, okay, so it starts at 33. And then if we said build your own, and we'd like to buy an M3, and the M3 starts at 63. M3 sedan at 63. So the M3 sedan does span a little bit higher than the start of the 5 Series, because basically the 5 Series is in the mid 50s, right? So if we select a 5 Series, the 5 Series runs from 50 up through 72. And the 7 Series runs from 80 to 97.
So they're doing the same thing. I don't know what the ratio is. Everybody's probably doing it up to a point.
Yeah, but BMW brought the 2 Series, and I guess that's how they confused things a little bit for their buyers, is they brought the 2 Series, which is like the size of the previous generation 3 Series. But the 2 Series is in the low 30s up to the 50. And then the 3 Series is in the low 30s up to 50 as well. So, yeah, they're confusing things as well. And they dropped the 1 Series when they came out with the 2 Series because the 1 Series wasn't doing as well. And then they brought the 4 Series in between the 3 Series and the 5 Series. So yeah, basically BMW's got a car every $2,000 from 32 to 97.
I guess they want to cover the whole market.
But then there are features, there are options on top of each of those price points, right?
Right.
Because just because
so you could do the same thing as what you were talking about, the Cadillac. You can turn that cheaper car into a higher priced car.
But I also think that that's how Cadillac could, you know, that's how you sell CTSs is if the AT3 sells for 30,000 and if the CT3 sells for 30,000 and the CT5 sells for 50,000, then people know right away, what did you pay for your car? Right now, if you roll up in a CTS, I don't think the average person in the street understands that that's a $60,000 car, right?
Yes, probably not. Starting point.
It's Cadillac. I don't know what it is.
starting point 60,000.
Right. And I mean, an enthusiast would know, well, okay, if you're driving a new CTSV, then you probably paid around 80,000 for that. But anybody else, a non-enthusiast, would have no clue.
Right. Man, I should have got my, when I stopped at Phoenix and visited, there was kids there, 14, 16, whatever he was. He knew all the stats on all the cars, man. He studied that stuff.
Perfect. So is that your nephew or your?
Well, that was my daughter's cousin, husband's cousin. So I don't know what they were. Her husband's cousin.
Yes, I think it's part of your daughter's family.
Yeah, they're sort of related somehow.
Yeah, not too much. Related by marriage, yes. So, Mike, any other topics we should cover this week? We've used up 55 of our 3 minutes.
No, I have a question. I guess, have you talked to Texas Jim? Is he coming to see us again one of these days? Or
I hope so. I have not spoken with him. I did send a text to Jim and Jim tonight when we were revving up the show to let them know that chat was on and we had things going on, but I have not heard back from either one of them. So both of them, I think they're not personally having health issues, but they're dealing with some things. So, and then with the holidays up, then it wouldn't surprise me if we didn't see them until after the holidays. But I do hope Texas Jim will come back and participate. He lives here in the neighborhood, and I always enjoy seeing him in person. And so hopefully we can get together and catch up.
so is this? Are we going to continue Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve?
So let's talk about that. I'm thinking no, because Christmas Eve is the 24th is Christmas Eve, right?
Yes.
So I'm thinking no. And then the 31st is New Year's Eve. So I'm thinking no. So I think our next show will be on the 7th. What do you think?
Works for me.
Because I think the other times you should be with your family.
Right.
And unless we're all going to have our family on the show. Now that could be interesting is I'll have my wife here and you can put your wife there and we'll have the other guys put their wives on and then we'll see how the show may be better that way. Certainly the video would be better.
Yes. Certainly everybody would like to look at the wives more than us.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for being on. As I say, you turned it from reasons why we're not going to be on this week to we actually could have a chat. I'm going to hit stop broadcast. Hang on just a minute. So we will not be on. Merry Christmas to everyone out there in Cadillac land. I hope everyone gets the Cadillac you wanted under the tree. And Happy New Year. And we'll look forward to seeing you in 2016. But hold on, Mike.